My ex-wife and mother-in-law called me a failure when I worked as a janitor in their family business. The name's Sam Wilson, and I'm 42 years old with more life experience than I bargained for. 5 years ago, I was Silicon Valley's golden boy. Not quite launching rockets into space, but my code made things fly. Senior engineer at ByteLogic with stock options that made my financial advisor giggle. Corner office with that perfect view of the San Francisco skyline that made other devs walk by just a peek inside. You know those success stories they feature in Forbes? I was on my way there until I wasn't. Burnout doesn't hit you like a truck. It creeps in like fog on the bay. First, you're staying late to debug that one critical feature. Then you're chugging Red Bulls at 2 a.m. while your wife sleeps alone. Next thing you know, you're staring at your monitor for an hour without typing a single line of code. My breaking point wasn't dramatic. No office meltdown that would go viral on LinkedIn. I simply walked into my boss's office on a Tuesday morning, placed my laptop on his desk, and said I was done. Just like that. Mike, my boss, couldn't compute what was happening. His face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that looked like betrayal. The man actually yelled that I was throwing away the dream, the American dream, the Silicon Valley dream. Whatever dream had us all working 80-hour weeks while our souls slowly died inside ergonomic chairs. In my head, I was thinking something I didn't have the guts to say out loud. Dreams shouldn't smell like antidepressants and missed anniversaries. The drive home that day was the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. Windows down, wind in my hair. No Slack notifications pinging every 30 seconds. My ex-wife Megan didn't see it that way. Neither did her mother Brenda. The matriarch of their family started BrightMind, some analytics platform for schools that was supposedly revolutionizing education. When I told them what I'd done, you'd think I confessed to selling state secrets. Brenda called me a traitor while sipping her $8 latte, foam perfectly preserved on her lipstick. According to her, real men don't break. Real men push through. Real men sacrifice their mental health on the altar of capitalism and call it ambition. Our divorce was faster than Starbucks Wi-Fi on a slow day. 12 years of marriage dissolved in paperwork and mediator appointments. The judge barely looked up from his papers when granting Megan primary custody of our daughter Miley. Just another Tuesday in family court. I got an apartment the size of my old office bathroom and watched my savings account shrink while looking for jobs. Turns out, when you walk out a senior position without notice, Silicon Valley has a long memory. The rejections piled up like unopened mail. Life has a sick sense of humor. 3 months of unemployment later, I became the night janitor at BrightMind. Yeah, you read that right. Cleaning toilets and emptying trash at the company my ex-wife's family runs. The same place where they host their famous Christmas parties I'm no longer invited to. The night shift supervisor didn't recognize my name when I applied. Just another middle-aged guy with a decent resume gap, looking for any port in a storm. The irony was so thick, you could cut it with a box cutter. I now use to break down cardboard for recycling. The new employees don't know who I am. To them, I'm just the quiet janitor who keeps his head down. But the old-timers, they remember. Troy, my former brother-in-law who heads their sales department, makes a point of dropping papers next to the trash when I'm around. Then snickers like we're back in high school. One night, Brenda accidentally spilled her coffee on the floor right in front of me. Sam, clean this up. You're the professional now. Those were her exact words, while everyone pretended not to watch. I smiled thinly and thought to myself, patience is wanting to throw a mop at someone's head, but washing the floor instead. The worst part isn't the cleaning or the humiliation. It's Miley, my beautiful, brilliant 13-year-old daughter, who I'm not allowed to see without court supervision. Megan made sure of that, claiming my mental instability made me an unfit father. What can you give her besides the smell of bleach? Those words still burn more than any cleaning chemical I work with. But I'm not giving up. Not on myself, not on Miley. Every night I show up, put on my uniform, and do the job with thoroughness that would impress my old engineering managers. I made friends with Joe the security guard, a Vietnam vet who shares his homemade beef jerky and stories about his grandkids. We laugh about the weather, the Giants' latest losing streak, and the ridiculous startup jargon we overhear. I bring donuts to the night coders sometimes, the ones who stay late because deadlines don't care about work-life balance. They nod their thanks, most too absorbed in their screens to make conversation. I get it. I was them once, lost in the matrix, chasing that dopamine hit of solving the unsolvable. That's how I noticed Noah. Skinny kid, probably fresh out of Stanford, hunched over his laptop at 3 a.m. like the world would end if he closed his eyes. The blue light reflected off his glasses as he muttered something about neural networks and overfitting errors. As I wiped down his desk edge, careful not to disturb his workspace, I couldn't help myself. Add a dropout layer, or your model will overheat like my career did. The words just slipped out before my janitor persona could stop them. Noah looked up at me like I just started speaking in tongues. His bloodshot eyes widened, glasses sliding down his nose. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, suddenly very awake. I shrugged and kept wiping. I read stuff. He wasn't buying it. His fingers stopped typing completely, a rare sight for a coder on deadline. That's graduate-level machine learning terminology. Who are you really? For a moment, I considered walking away. Keeping my head down had been working fine, but something in his desperate, exhausted expression reminded me of myself before the fall, before I became invisible behind my mop and cart. Just a guy who used to write code before he started writing his life story with a mop. I said, "Finally, your architecture looks solid, but your training parameters need work." Noah swiveled his chair to fully face me now. Coffee and deadline momentarily forgotten. "Are you some kind of undercover hacker? Corporate spy?" His voice was half joking, half genuinely concerned. I laughed for what felt like the first time in months. "No, just an old dog who still remembers a few tricks. Good luck with your project, kid." As I pushed my cart toward the next row of desks, he called after me. "Wait, what's your name?" "Sam," I said without turning around. "Just Sam." The next evening, Noah was waiting by the break room when my shift started. 2 cups of coffee in hand, steam rising in the fluorescent light. And just like that, this janitor's lonely routine got a little less lonely. That cup of coffee Noah offered me turned into a nightly ritual. We'd meet in the break room around midnight. Him taking a coding break, me taking a mopping break. The 50-cent machine coffee tasted like warm dirt, but after 3 years of night shifts, my standards had dropped lower than the stock market during the 2008 crash. "This is the highlight of my shift," I told Noah after our third coffee meetup. The kid had this earnestness about him that reminded me of myself before corporate America had beaten the optimism out of me. Fresh out of Stanford with student loans that could buy a small house in any state except California. Noah wasn't just another code monkey churning out features for some soulless app. He was working on his graduate thesis project alongside his internship, an AI system designed to read emotional cues during Zoom calls. It would flag when employees showed signs of burnout, anxiety, or depression. The algorithm detects micro-expressions that humans might miss, he explained, showing me his laptop screen filled with matrices and training data. Like when someone says they're fine, but their face tells a different story for a split second. I couldn't help but laugh. So, basically a digital BS detector for corporate America? Noah grinned. That's exactly it. Companies lose billions annually from employee turnover. If HR departments could identify who's about to burn out before they quit. "You could have saved my career," I said, only half joking. Over the following weeks, our midnight coffee breaks stretched longer. I'd finish my cleaning route faster, just to have more time to talk code with Noah. It felt like finding an oasis after years in the desert. Suddenly, I was speaking my native language again instead of the simplified English I use with other janitors. Once, while explaining a particularly complex neural network architecture, Noah stopped and stared at me. "You really know your stuff, Sam. Where did you learn all this?" I sipped my coffee, considering how much to reveal. Back in another life, I published papers on TensorFlow that got cited at major conferences. before I burned out like a cheap toaster left plugged in too long. His eyes widened. Wait, Sam Wilson? The Sam Wilson who wrote Optimizing Convolutional Neural Networks for Real-Time Applications? That paper basically got me through my undergrad AI course. The recognition in his eyes was both gratifying and painful, like seeing an old photograph of yourself when you were healthy and happy. Everything passes, I told him, but code is eternal. Someone somewhere is probably still using my libraries. Noah shook his head in disbelief. Dude, what happened? How did you end up? He gestured at my janitor uniform, too polite to finish the sentence. I gave him the abbreviated version of my downfall. The 80-hour weeks that became 100-hour weeks. The panic attacks in bathroom stalls between meetings. The day I couldn't remember my daughter's birthday. The breaking point. Silicon Valley eats its young, I concluded. And sometimes it's not so young, too. Noah was quiet for a moment. Would you mind looking at my model? I think there's something wrong with my optimization function, but I can't figure out. That request was like offering a drink to a man who'd been sober for years. Dangerous. Tempting. Exactly what I wanted. Your loss function is like my ex-wife, I told him after examining his code. It makes a lot of noise, but doesn't actually help you improve. Noah burst out laughing, so loud the sound echoed through the empty office. I'd forgotten how good it felt to make someone laugh with a coding joke, to be seen as something more than a guy who empties the trash. We rewrote his code until sunrise, the cleaning completely forgotten. His model's accuracy jumped from 68% to 94% by the time the early birds started arriving for work. I had to quickly grab my mop and pretend I was finishing up as executives filtered in with their AirPods and Starbucks. For the first time in years, I drove home feeling alive, like I'd reconnected with a part of myself I thought was dead and buried. I slept soundly that day, not even bothered by the construction noise outside my apartment window. Our coding sessions became regular. Noah would bring problems, and I'd help solve them. We'd debate algorithm choices, like sports fans argue about quarterback stats. Sometimes I'd write pseudocode on napkins when inspiration struck. It felt like mentoring a younger version of myself, giving him the guidance I wish I'd had. You should be teaching at Stanford, not cleaning floors, Noah said one night after I'd explained a particularly elegant solution. I just shrugged. Maybe in another timeline. One Tuesday night, around 2 a.m., we were huddled over Noah's laptop deep in coding mode. I was explaining why his gradient descent algorithm was getting stuck in local minima when the lights in that section of the office suddenly flicked on. What the hell is going on here? I recognized that voice before I even looked up. Megan stood there in her designer business suit, arms crossed, looking like she caught two teenagers smoking behind the school. The CEO doesn't usually show up at 2 a.m., but quarterly reports were due, and Megan always micromanaged the numbers personally. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the scene, her ex-husband in a janitor uniform sitting next to her company's intern, both staring at code. Sam, are you serious right now? You're distracting our interns from actual work to relive your glory days. She turned to Noah. Don't let this loser fool you. He couldn't hack it when it mattered. That's why he's cleaning toilets, while people like you build the future. Each word was precisely aimed to draw blood. I said nothing, but inside I was thinking, better to be a janitor with a soul than a CEO without a heart. Noah, to his credit, stood up for me. Actually, Mrs. Wilson, Sam just helped me solve a major problem with my thesis project. He's brilliant with neural networks. Megan's laugh could have frozen hell over. Brilliance without follow-through is worthless. Intern with the janitor on your own time. Now get back to your assigned projects. She turned on her designer heel and walked toward her office, calling over her shoulder, Sam, the third-floor restrooms need attention. That's what we pay you for. Noah looked mortified. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. Not your fault, kid, I said, already standing up and reaching for my cart. The Queen has spoken. But something had shifted. After that night, I started thinking about quitting, not because of Megan's humiliation. I'd grown a thick skin for that. I was worried about Noah. In corporate America, being associated with the wrong person can tank your career faster than any coding mistake. I didn't want my presence to hurt his future. The following week, I gave my notice to the cleaning company. Found a similar night job at an office building downtown. Less pay, but no ex-wife breathing down my neck. No reminders of what I used to be. I didn't tell Noah I was leaving. Just disappeared like a ghost. Back to invisibility. Back to being nobody. For a month, I focused on my new routine. Cleaning floors that didn't hold memories. Taking out trash for strangers who didn't know my name. I even started going to a community college coding workshop on weekends, helping kids who couldn't afford boot camps learn basic programming. Small steps back towards something resembling purpose. Then came the email that changed everything. Noah had tracked down my personal email somehow. The message was brief, but hit me like a freight train. They accepted my project into Y Combinator's accelerator program. Without a technical co-founder, I'm drowning. You're my only hope. Please call me. I stared at those words on my cracked phone screen during my lunch break, sitting alone in a maintenance closet that smelled of industrial cleaners. The universe has a strange sense of humor. Just when you accept your place at the bottom, someone throws you a rope from above. Second chance or second grave. The question haunted me through my entire shift. That night, I stood in my tiny apartment bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. Gray stubble, dark circles under my eyes, janitor uniform hanging on the door hook. Was I really considering jumping back into the tech world that had chewed me up and spit me out? The startup game is brutal even for 25-year-olds with nothing to lose. At 42, with a failed career and a daughter I barely saw, did I have the strength to try again? To risk failure on a public stage once more? I thought about what Noah's AI was designed to do. Identify people at their breaking points before they shatter. Maybe I needed that 5 years ago. But maybe what I needed now was exactly what Noah was offering. Purpose. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. Instead of going straight home to sleep, I drove to Ocean Beach and watched the sunrise over San Francisco. Silicon Valley was just waking up across the bay, thousands of ambitious souls ready to change the world or die trying. I pulled out my phone and typed a reply to Noah. I'm in, but on my terms. Back in my apartment, I threw my mop into the corner with a satisfying thud. All right, Sam, I said to myself, time to get back in the game. The next morning, instead of sleeping, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror with a pack of sticky notes in hand. Ideas already forming faster than I could write them down. The janitor was reporting for a different kind of duty now. My apartment became our headquarters by default. Not exactly the gleaming Silicon Valley office space you see in tech documentaries. More like a glorified closet with plumbing. The place was barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette that doubled as my home office. But the rent was what a 42-year-old janitor with child support payments could afford in the Bay Area. In other words, it cost almost everything I made. The morning after I texted Noah, he showed up at my door with a backpack full of energy drinks, 3 packs of sticky notes, and the kind of manic enthusiasm only 20-somethings possess. My walls soon disappeared under a rainbow of Post-its, yellow for core features, blue for technical architecture, pink for market strategy, green for potential clients. Welcome to our Pentagon. I told him as we stepped back to admire our analog version of a project management board. Noah laughed, but I was only half joking. From these humble beginnings, we were planning to wage war on the very industry that had chewed me up and spit me out. We called our startup Humanana IQ. The name came to me during a 3 a.m. brainstorming session fueled by cheap instant coffee. Our mission was simple yet revolutionary. Build AI that could detect employee burnout through Zoom calls and help companies reduce turnover. The irony wasn't lost on me. If something like this had existed 5 years earlier, maybe I wouldn't have ended up cleaning toilets at my ex-wife's company. Noah brought the cutting-edge machine learning knowledge and academic connections. I contributed years of real-world software architecture experience and the hard-earned wisdom of someone who crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. Between his optimism and my cynicism, we balanced each other out perfectly. The Y Combinator acceptance gave us 3 months of runway, barely enough to build a minimum viable product. I withdrew the last of my meager savings and stopped paying into my 401k. Noah moved out of his expensive apartment and into a friend's couch to stretch his finances. We were all in, betting everything on this one shot at redemption. I hadn't coded professionally in years, but it came back faster than I expected. My fingers remembered keyboard shortcuts my conscious mind had forgotten. The satisfaction of solving complex problems through elegant solutions returned like an old friend. For the first time since my breakdown, I was working 12-hour days again, but this time, it didn't feel like a prison sentence. This time, I was building something I actually believed in. There's something both terrifying and exhilarating about creating a startup in your 40s. The stakes feel higher. You're acutely aware that this might be your last chance to build something meaningful. My 20-something colleagues at ByteLogic had approached each project with casual confidence, secure in the knowledge that even if they failed, they had decades to try again. I didn't have that luxury anymore. Our first prototype was a disaster. The AI kept flagging everybody as being on the verge of a nervous breakdown, including a particularly cheerful marketing executive who just returned from vacation. Noah was devastated, but I laughed harder than I had in years. "Kid," I told him, "you've just created the world's most pessimistic algorithm. It thinks everyone's as miserable as I was at ByteLogic." We pivoted, refined, recalibrated our training data, slept less, coded more. The living room floor became our cafeteria, littered with empty pizza boxes and Thai food containers. My bathroom cabinet transformed into a medical supply closet stocked with eye drops, wrist braces, and industrial-strength ibuprofen. 1 month in, we had something workable. We ran it against recorded Zoom calls from companies that had partnered with Noah's research lab at Stanford. The results were promising enough that we celebrated by ordering from an actual restaurant instead of the dollar menu. 2 months in, we had our first breakthrough. The system analyzed a series of team meetings and flagged a marketing manager named John as showing significant signs of burnout, recommending the company offer him time off before he quit. 2 weeks later, John submitted his resignation. That night, we splurged on a celebration dinner at Pizza Hut. Not exactly champagne and caviar, but it was all our bootstrap budget could afford. The plastic booth and fluorescent lighting couldn't dampen our spirits as we demolished a large pepperoni between us. I'll never forget how Noah raised his paper cup of Diet Coke, like it was fine champagne, to predicting human suffering before it happens. He toasted with a grin. I clinked my cup against his. And to second chances for washed-up engineers. The waiter probably thought we were insane, laughing so hard over pizza and soda like we just won the lottery. In a way, we had. Demo day at Y Combinator approached faster than a deadline at my old job. We practiced our pitch until we could recite it in our sleep. Noah would handle the technical explanation, while I focused on the market potential and our execution strategy. The kid was brilliant with code, but turned into a stammering mess when speaking to potential investors. I, on the other hand, had pitched to board members and VCs in my previous life. Some skills you never lose, even when everything else falls apart. Our 5-minute presentation felt like stepping into a time machine. There I was, back in the arena I thought I'd left forever, wearing my one decent suit purchased from a discount outlet. The difference was at this time, I believed in what I was selling. This wasn't some soulless product designed to maximize engagement metrics or harvest user data. This was something that could have saved me and countless others from hitting rock bottom. The response exceeded our wildest expectations. 3 venture capital firms expressed interest on the spot. By the end of the week, we had multiple term sheets to consider. We eventually partnered with Horizon Ventures, a mid-sized fund out of San Diego that specialized in AI startups. Their $2 million seed investment seemed like all the money in the world to a guy who'd been counting quarters for laundry just months earlier. Suddenly, we had an actual office in a co-working space. Business cards with fancy titles. A small team of engineers and data scientists who looked at me, the former janitor, with respect when I spoke about system architecture and scaling challenges. The imposter syndrome was overwhelming at first. I kept expecting someone to hand me a mop and tell me to get back to work. Our first clients were small businesses with tight budgets and high turnover: dental offices, real estate firms, marketing agencies. They couldn't afford the massive HR infrastructure of tech giants, but suffered proportionally more when key employees quit. We charged them a fraction of what competitor solutions cost and delivered results within weeks. The testimonials started rolling in. A dental practice in Phoenix reduced staff turnover by 40% after implementing our recommendations. A boutique law firm in Chicago retained 3 associates they would have otherwise lost. A tech startup in Austin identified and addressed a toxic team dynamic before it spiraled out of control. With each success story, our confidence grew. So did our client list and revenue projections. 6 months after that Pizza Hut celebration, we were cash flow positive, a rare achievement for a SaaS startup still in its first year. I approached scaling our infrastructure with the caution of someone who'd seen systems collapse under pressure. At ByteLogic, we prioritized speed over stability, resulting in frequent outages that had us frantically debugging at 2 a.m. while executives breathed down our necks. I wasn't making that mistake again. Stability is when you can sleep through the night, I told Noah whenever he pushed for faster feature rollouts. A lesson I learned the hard way. Our architecture wasn't flashy or cutting edge, but it was rock solid. Triple redundancy, comprehensive error handling, automated failover systems. The works. Other startups in our cohort moved faster and got more press, but none could match our 99.99% uptime. While we were building something sustainable, rumors began circulating about trouble at BrightMind. I didn't seek out this information. Silicon Valley is just a small town disguised as an industry. Word travels fast, especially about companies in decline. Apparently, their core product had fallen behind competitors. Major clients were jumping ship. Brenda was reportedly screaming at employees during all-hands meetings. Troy was spotted drunk at industry events, desperately trying to close deals by offering massive discounts. Megan had taken an extended mental health break, the irony of which wasn't lost on me. I took no pleasure in their struggles. Well, maybe a tiny bit, if I'm being completely honest. But mostly, I felt a strange sense of detachment. Their success or failure no longer defined me. I was too busy building something meaningful to waste energy on schadenfreude. Our big breakthrough came when a Fortune 500 company signed on for a pilot program across their customer service division. Suddenly, Humanana IQ was handling thousands of Zoom meetings daily, identifying burnout patterns, and generating actionable reports for management. The contract was worth more than my entire 5-year salary at ByteLogic. Noah and I celebrated with a proper dinner this time, at an actual restaurant with cloth napkins and everything. He ordered champagne, insisting that some milestones demanded more than soda in paper cups. To think, he said between sips, a year ago I was desperate intern, and you were mopping floors. The universe works in mysterious ways, I replied. Sometimes it needs to break you apart completely before it can rebuild you into something better. As our first anniversary approached, Horizon Ventures called a special meeting. Given our growth trajectory and market position, they wanted to discuss acquisition opportunities, not of us being acquired, but of us acquiring smaller competitors to expand our capabilities. One name on their list made me freeze: BrightMind. According to their analysis, my ex-wife's family company was on the brink of bankruptcy, hemorrhaging clients and burning through their last reserves. Their technology was outdated, but their client relationships still had value. The asking price was pennies on the dollar compared to their previous valuation. I stared at the spreadsheet, trying to process what I was seeing. The universe wasn't just mysterious. It had a wicked sense of humor, too. After the meeting, Noah found me standing by the window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline that had once represented all my broken dreams. "What are you thinking?" he asked, studying my expression carefully. I turned to him with a half-smile. "This is either poetic justice or a trap. What do you think?" The acquisition proposal for BrightMind sat on my desk for 3 days untouched. Every time I walked into my office, I'd stare at the folder like it contained radioactive material. Noah finally called me out. "So are we buying your ex-wife's company, or just using the folder as a fancy paperweight?" I finally opened it on day 4. The numbers confirmed the rumors. Brightmind was circling the drain faster than my last paycheck at the janitorial service. Their cash reserves would barely last 2 months. Client retention looked like a ski slope, the dangerous kind. Their once innovative education analytics platform now resembled a Windows 95 installation running on modern hardware. The company, once valued at $15 million, could now be ours for less than the price of a modest home in Palo Alto. Noah flipped through the documents, eyebrows climbing higher with each page. Their tech stack belongs in a museum, he pointed out. We'd essentially be buying a client list and real estate. He wasn't wrong. From a technical standpoint, acquiring Brightmind made as much sense as installing a fax machine in our office. Their code base resembled spaghetti thrown against a wall by an angry chef. Their data architecture looked like something designed during a hackathon, after 3 days without sleep. But sometimes business isn't about technology. It's about relationships, market position, and occasionally sweet karma. Their client list includes major school districts we'd take years to land, I reminded him. Plus, they have primo office space in Soma. Noah gave me his best skeptical startup founder look. You want to buy your ex-wife's company for office space? Really? I leaned back in my chair, finally saying what we both knew. There might be a certain poetic justice to it. The janitor returns as the CEO. It's practically a Hallmark movie, minus the Christmas theme and romance subplot. Is this about revenge? Noah asked without judgment. I considered the question. 2 years ago, absolutely. But after enough time cleaning toilets, you either learn humility or lose your mind. It's not revenge, I told him honestly. It's redemption, and maybe a tiny bit about proving them wrong. But mostly, it's just good business with a side of personal satisfaction, like finding a 20 in your winter coat pocket. Noah grinned. Then let's do it. But I have one condition. The kid was starting to negotiate like a true Silicon Valley operator. What's that? You take the CEO title this time. No more hiding in the code. I've been serving as CTO at Humanana IQ, staying safely in the background while Noah handled the spotlight. It was comfortable there among the servers and algorithms that never judged me for my past failures. But he was right. It was time to stop hiding. The negotiations lasted 2 weeks. Brenda and Troy fought desperately, like 2 captains trying to salvage dignity from a sinking ship. I remained patient but firm, channeling my inner Zen janitor. They needed this deal more than we did, and we all knew it. We structured an asset purchase to cherry-pick the valuable parts of Brightmind, their clients, their office space, their brand name, which still carried weight in educational circles. We offered positions to their engineers and customer success team, but made it crystal clear new management was coming. The final sticking point was my role. When our attorneys outlined the new management structure with me as CEO, Brendan nearly choked on her $8 latte. Absolutely not. She sputtered. Sam Wilson cannot run this company. He's mentally unstable. He'll probably have another breakdown and disappear again. He was our janitor, for heaven's sake. Our lead investor from Horizon Ventures leaned forward, fixing Brenda with a stare cold enough to freeze hot coffee. Ms. Phillips, Humanana IQ is acquiring Brightmind, not merging with it. You're 3 weeks from bankruptcy. This deal is your only chance to salvage anything from the company you've run into the ground. The janitor clause isn't negotiable. The papers were signed the next day. Brightmind became a wholly owned subsidiary of Humanana IQ. After the lawyers and bankers left, I sat alone in our conference room staring at the signed documents. 5 years ago, I'd been at rock bottom, scrubbing toilets in this very building. Now I owned it. If life were fair, Morgan Freeman would be narrating this moment. Walking into Brightmind's office as its new owner was like entering an alternate universe. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. Not an expensive suit that screamed, "I'm compensating for past humiliation," but a perfectly tailored $200 ensemble from Target. Professional enough to command respect, modest enough to make a point. Success doesn't need designer labels. The receptionist, Julie, who'd always snuck me donuts during my night shifts, did a double take when I walked in with our executive team. "Mr. Wilson?" She asked, confusion evident. Are you here to see Miss Phillips? I'm here to address the staff, Julie. The acquisition was finalized yesterday. I'm the new CEO. Her jaw dropped so fast, I worried she might need medical attention. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. Employees filed into the main conference room, whispering like kids at a magic show. Some recognized me from my cleaning days. Others knew me only by reputation, either as the ex-husband of their boss or as the co-founder of Humana IQ. Troy walked in last, his usual swagger replaced by the awkward shuffle of a man who just discovered his fly was down at a funeral. The Rolex on his wrist and Italian loafers on his feet suddenly looked like costume jewelry from a clearance bin. Brenda attended with the enthusiasm of someone getting a root canal without anesthesia. She sat in the back corner, arms crossed, designer sunglasses unsuccessfully hiding her puffy eyes. I spotted Megan among the marketing team, looking shell-shocked. According to office gossip, she'd been losing influence in the company over the past year as it struggled. Even in a family business, failure has consequences. Now she was watching her ex-husband, the man she once mocked for his mental breakdown, take control of her family's company. Sometimes life delivers plot twists even Hollywood would reject as too unrealistic. Standing at the front of the room that had once been forbidden territory, I surveyed the faces before me, nervous, confused, worried about their jobs. I remember that feeling all too well. For those who don't know me, I'm Sam Wilson, CEO of Humana IQ and now Bright Mind. Some of you may recognize me. 5 years ago, I worked in this building, not as an executive, but as the person who cleaned your offices after hours. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Troy studied his expensive shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Megan stared straight ahead, her face impressively blank. Brenda looked like she was contemplating creative ways to commit homicide with office supplies. This acquisition isn't about settling old scores, I assured them, which was mostly true. It's about combining complementary strengths. Bright Mind still has valuable client relationships in education. Humana IQ brings cutting-edge AI technology. Together, we can build something greater than either company could achieve alone. I outlined our integration plan, emphasizing that we valued their institutional knowledge and weren't planning the standard Silicon Valley acquisition move, mass layoffs followed by champagne toast to synergy. Instead, we would evaluate each role on its merits. As the meeting concluded, I noticed something unexpected in many employees' expressions: relief. Bright Mind had been sinking for months while leadership arranged deck chairs on their Titanic. Our intervention represented a lifeline to many, even if it came with the awkward twist of the former janitor becoming their boss. After the all-hands, I took a solitary walk through the office. These hallways held so many memories, most involving a mop and the sting of humiliation. The corner where Troy once accidentally spilled an entire big gulp just as I finished mopping. The executive bathroom where Brenda would leave passive-aggressive notes about cleaning standards. The kitchen where Megan had pretended not to recognize me in front of her colleagues. I stopped at that kitchen now. Someone had placed a whiteboard on the wall for office announcements and lunch theft accusations. On impulse, I picked up a marker and wrote, "Cleanliness isn't just about floors. It's about how we treat each other." A voice behind me chuckled. I turned to find Joe, the security guard who'd shared his homemade beef jerky during my lowest days. "Always knew you were a king. Sam, just without a crown," he said, nodding at my message. "Good to see you back where you belong." We chatted briefly about his grandkids and upcoming retirement. I made a mental note to ensure his pension survived the acquisition intact. Some debts can't be measured in quarterly reports. Over the following weeks, we began the delicate process of integration. Troy resigned within the first month, unable to adjust to the new hierarchy where he answered to his former brother-in-law. I accepted his resignation with the same professional courtesy he'd shown me when I was cleaning his office. Absolutely none. Okay, maybe there was a little revenge after all. Brenda proved more resilient. After her initial hostility, she shifted to grudging cooperation. She'd built Bright Mind from scratch and, despite her flaws, knew its inner workings better than anyone. I offered her a role as an advisor during the transition. Limited authority, but enough respect to salvage her reputation in the industry. Megan's situation was more complicated. She'd been avoiding me since the acquisition announcement, ducking into conference rooms when she saw me coming. I finally found her alone in the break room, staring into a coffee cup like it contained the answers to life's mysteries. This is weird for both of us, I acknowledged, breaking the ice. But we can make it work professionally. She looked up, shadows under her eyes. You came back just to take everything, didn't you? I didn't come back at all. I corrected her. I never left. I was here cleaning your coffee spills while you were pretending I didn't exist. The difference is, now I have the corner office instead of the janitor's closet. Her eyes flashed with that familiar anger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I considered lying, then decided against it. A little, yeah, but not as much as I thought I would. Success is actually a better feeling than revenge. Who knew? She didn't have a response to that. The following week, she submitted her resignation. I wasn't surprised, but I also wasn't celebrating. Some victories feel hollow once you've actually won them. As fall turned to winter, Humanana IQ Bright Mind stabilized into a promising enterprise. Our combined client list spanned corporations, universities, and 12 school districts across the country. Noah thrived as Chief Innovation Officer, constantly pushing our technology forward. At 24, he was already being profiled in tech magazines as the next big thing. For my part, I discovered I actually enjoy being CEO. The strategic challenges, the client relationships, the responsibility of building something lasting, all of it engaged parts of my brain that had gone dormant during my time with the mop. Not that it didn't come with costs. My apartment had become little more than a storage unit with a shower. My diet consisted primarily of takeout, consumed during conference calls. My social life was a weekly boxing class where nobody knew me as anything but the middle-aged guy with a decent right hook. On the personal front, things remained complicated. Miley, now 13, was still largely absent from my life despite my improved circumstances. Our contact remained limited to supervised visits every other month, a painful reminder that some damage can't be undone with a successful exit or a fancy title. I'd file for a custody review based on my changed circumstances, but the legal wheels turned slowly. Meanwhile, I sent child support payments double the court-mandated amount and maintained a college fund that grew with every successful quarter. One December evening, I was working late, a habit I couldn't break despite being the boss. The building was nearly empty, the cleaning staff, whom I made a point of knowing by name, quietly going about their rounds. My phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, expecting a spam call. When I did, a formal voice identified herself as Sandra Thompson from Child and Family Services, explaining she was Miley's new caseworker. My heart immediately began racing. Is everything okay? I asked. Worst-case scenarios flooded my mind. Everything's fine, Mr. Wilson, she assured me. Actually, that's why I'm calling. Miley has seen news articles about your company and has expressed interest in seeing you outside the regular visitation schedule. I nearly dropped the phone. For years, our visits have been awkward affairs at family service centers, with Miley politely distant and me trying not to seem desperate for connection. The thought that she'd initiated contact felt like winning the lottery after years of buying tickets. The caseworker continued. We need to update her file, given your changed circumstances. Would you be available for a home visit next week? I glanced around my office, the place where I spent far more time than my apartment. Actually, could we meet here? At my company? I think Miley might be interested in seeing what we do. That would be acceptable, Miss Thompson replied. How about next Tuesday afternoon? Bring her tomorrow, I said, surprising myself with the urgency in my voice. If that works for your schedule. After arranging the details, I sat back in my chair, emotions washing over me. The thought of showing Miley what I'd built since those dark days meant more than any acquisition or funding round ever could. I'll bring her by at 2 p.m. tomorrow, the social worker confirmed before hanging up. My heart pounded in my chest as I said the words I've been waiting years to say. Bring her tomorrow. I spent the entire morning before Miley's visit in the state, that could only be described as controlled panic. My executive assistant watched in amusement as I straightened the same stack of magazines 3 times and adjusted a plant that looked perfectly fine. Even Noah noticed my nervousness, commenting that I seemed more stressed than during our series A Pitch to Investors. When was the last time you saw a CEO sweat over a teenager's opinion? He joked. Every parent in America. I shot back. Investors can only take your money. Kids can take your heart. At precisely 2 p.m., my assistant buzzed to let me know they had arrived. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie one last time, and stepped into the reception area to find Ms. Thompson, a professional-looking woman in her 40s, standing beside Miley. My daughter had grown at least 3 inches since our last court-supervised visit 6 months ago. Her braces were gone, replaced by a perfect smile that triggered an ache of missed moments. She wore jeans, white sneakers, and a hoodie with some band logo I was too old to recognize. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, styled in a way that made her look older than 13, more like a young woman than the little girl who used to ride on my shoulders. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the reception area. All my rehearsed greetings vanished from my mind. 5 years of separation, of supervised visits in sterile family service centers, of missed birthdays and school events, all of it hung in the air between us. Ms. Thompson broke the awkward silence with professional efficiency, explaining that this was an informal visit to update their files given my changed circumstances. As she spoke, Miley's eyes wandered around the modern office space, taking in the glass walls, open work areas, and the Humanana IQ logo displayed prominently behind the reception desk. "Welcome to Humanana IQ," I managed to say, finding my voice at last. "Would you like a tour?" Miley nodded, still studying the logo. "Dad," she asked, "is all this really yours?" That single word, Dad, instead of the formal father she'd been using in our supervised visits, hit me harder than any business success ever could. I swallowed hard before answering. "It's mine and Noah's," I explained. "We built it together. I'll introduce you to him during the tour. We help companies identify when their employees are burning out, so people don't break like I did once." A flash of understanding crossed her face. She'd been 9 when my life imploded, old enough to sense the chaos, but too young to fully comprehend it. Now, at 13, she was connecting those dots. As we began our tour, I explained our technology in terms a tech-savvy teenager could understand. How our AI analyzed facial expressions and speech patterns in video calls to detect early signs of burnout and stress. How we help companies create healthier work environments instead of burning through employees like disposable resources. Miley absorbed everything with remarkable intensity, asking questions that showed she'd inherited my analytical mind. Ms. Thompson followed quietly, taking occasional notes but giving us space to interact. In the development area, I introduced her to Noah, who charmed her instantly with his enthusiasm and lack of condescension. He showed her some of our code, explaining the machine learning models in a way that respected her intelligence without overwhelming her. "That's so cool," Miley said, her eyes lighting up. "We're learning basic coding in school, but nothing like this." Noah grinned. "Your dad's a real genius behind our algorithms. He can make neural networks dance like nobody else." I could see Miley reassessing me in real time. The father she knew had vanished into depression and janitorial work. The man standing before her now was designing advanced AI systems that major companies were paying millions to use. The cognitive dissonance was written across her face. In my office, she noticed a framed photo on my desk, one of the few personal items in the space. It showed a much younger Miley, maybe 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders at a beach. I kept it through everything. The breakdown, the divorce, the years of cleaning other people's messes. It was my reminder of what I'd lost and what I was fighting to regain. She picked it up, studying it like an artifact from another civilization. "I don't even remember this day," she admitted. "California coast," I said softly. "You built a sand castle, so big you refused to leave when the tide came in. I had to carry you away while you protested that you could defeat the ocean if given the chance." A smile flickered across her face, the first genuine one I'd seen directed at me in years. "That sounds like me." Ms. Thompson stepped out to take a phone call, leaving us momentarily alone. An awkward silence settled between us, the kind that forms when there's too much to say and no easy place to start. Miley broke it by gesturing toward my computer. Do you still code? Mom said you were really good at it before. Before everything. Every day I nodded. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never really forget. Just get a little rusty. She hesitated, then asked a question that clearly had been on her mind. Why did you become a janitor? At Mom's company? That seems weird. I considered how to answer in a way that was honest, but appropriate for a 13-year-old. The complete story involved depression, medication, therapy, and rock bottom. Topics too heavy for this fragile reconnection. After what happened at my old job, no tech company would hire me. I explained carefully. I needed work, and night janitorial shifts fit with my therapy appointments. The irony of cleaning your mom's office wasn't lost on me, but sometimes life takes strange turns. That job gave me perspective I needed, and eventually led me to meet Noah and start this company. She nodded, processing this information with surprise and maturity. Then, with a directness only kids can muster, she asked, was it hard? Being a janitor after being an executive? Extremely, I admitted, but not for the reasons you might think. The work itself was honest. What was hard was feeling invisible. People look right through the person cleaning their office. They forget you're human. A thoughtful expression crossed her face. Like how kids at school ignore the cafeteria workers. Exactly like that, I said, impressed by her empathy. It taught me to see people others overlook. Now I make sure our janitorial staff here get good benefits and are treated with respect. Everyone in this building knows their names. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Miss Thompson had been pulled into a longer call and suggested we continue our visit while she wrapped up her discussion, suddenly finding ourselves with unexpected freedom. I gave Miley the complete tour, including our break room with an impressive snack selection that made her eyes widen. The perks of startup culture never failed to impress newcomers. I wish my school had this much candy, she observed, carefully selecting a chocolate bar with the deliberation of a wine connoisseur. As we returned to my office, her gaze kept returning to my dual monitor setup, running our development environment. Finally, she couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. We're learning Python at school, she mentioned casually. It's my favorite class. I tried to hide my delight at this revelation. Like father, like daughter. Is that right? How's it going? She shrugged with practiced teenage nonchalance. It's pretty easy, actually. I built a game that beat my teacher's example. He said I had natural talent. The pride that swelled in my chest was almost painful. I'd missed so many moments to be proud of her, so many opportunities to encourage her growth. Now here she was, following in my footsteps without my guidance. I'd love to see her code sometime. I offered, try not to sound too eager. She hesitated, then asked a question that would change everything. Do you think could I have a laptop to code on? A real one, not just the school Chromebooks? Mom says they're too expensive for something I might lose interest in. The opportunity to contribute something meaningful to her life, to support a passion we shared, felt like a gift I didn't deserve. I maintained a neutral expression, but inside, I was already planning specifications and programming environments. Tell you what, I said, if you're serious about learning, I'd be happy to get you set up with a proper development machine. But only if you promise not to burn yourself out like your old man once did. Her face lit up with such hope that it nearly broke me. Really? You do that? Of course, I replied, as if I hadn't just been handed the most precious second chance imaginable. That's what dads are for. Before she could respond, there was a commotion in the reception area. Raised voices echoed down the hallway, one of them unmistakably Brenda's. My former mother-in-law had apparently chosen this exact moment to make an unscheduled appearance at the office. Miley tensed, recognizing her grandmother's voice. This day just keeps getting more interesting, I thought, leading her back toward reception. We found Brenda engaged in a heated discussion with my assistant, who was valiantly trying to explain that I was unavailable for drop-in visits. When Brenda spotted me with Miley, she froze mid-sentence, her designer handbag dangling from her arm like an expensive exclamation point. "Samuel?" She sputtered. "And Miley? What is going on here?" Miley shifted uncomfortably beside me, clearly caught between family factions. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Ms. Thompson from Family Services brought Miley for an official visit. I explained calmly. "We're just finishing up a tour. What can I help you with, Brenda?" My former mother-in-law collected herself with visible effort, adjusting her expression from shock to businesslike efficiency. "I need to discuss the Robertson School District account with you. They're threatening to leave us for ambient learning." She meant us, of course. The royal us. The one that still included her in the power structure despite all evidence to the contrary. "I'll have my assistant schedule time tomorrow," I replied professionally. "Right now, I'm with my daughter." The emphasis on those last two words wasn't subtle. Brenda's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation, calculating angles like the shrewd businesswoman she'd always been. With a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, she looked at Miley. "Darling, your mother has been worried sick about where you were. She'll be relieved to hear you're here." The implication that Megan didn't know about this visit hung in the air. I glanced at Miley, who was studying the floor with sudden interest. "This is an official visit with social services." I clarified for Brenda's benefit. Everything is above board. Brenda wasn't ready to concede the moment. Her gaze swept over me, taking the tailored suit and corner office. Visible evidence of my resurrection from professional death. "You know, Samuel," she said with false sweetness, "we always knew you had potential. If you just stuck it out at Bite Logic instead of having your episode." The audacity was almost impressive. Rewriting history was a Phillips family specialty, it seemed. "I appreciate your concern for my career trajectory, Brenda," I replied evenly. "But as you can see, things worked out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were in the middle of something important." She hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to being dismissed, especially by someone who had once cleaned her office bathroom. With a final tight smile at Miley and a promise to call about the Robertson account, she retreated, designer heels clicking aggressively across the reception area. I was about to apologize to Miley for the awkward encounter when my assistant appeared with another update. Ms. Thompson had concluded her call and was ready to continue our visit. Perfect timing. As we rejoined the social worker, Miley seemed quieter, processing the undercurrents of adult tension she'd just witnessed. Ms. Thompson, sensing the shift in mood, suggested we wrap up the visit with a brief discussion about next steps. In my office, she reviewed her notes while Miley examined the view of San Francisco from my window. "Based on today's observations and your changed circumstances, Mr. Wilson, I'll be recommending a modification to the visitation schedule. Would you be open to unsupervised visits, perhaps starting with weekends?" The question hit me like a physical force. This was what I'd been working toward for years. The chance to be a real father to Miley again, not just a court-appointed visitor in her life. "Absolutely," I managed to say, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'd be honored." Ms. Thompson nodded, making another note. "And what about you, Miley? How would you feel about spending more time with your father?" My daughter turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. "I like that," she said simply, "especially if I can learn more about coding. And maybe see where he lives?" The casual request to see my home, to enter my personal space, felt monumental, like being handed trust one wasn't sure I'd earned yet. "Of course," Ms. Thompson agreed. "We'll start with day visits and move forward from there. I'll file the recommendation this week." As they prepared to leave, Miley hesitated by my desk, eyes on the framed beach photo again. Almost impulsively, I took it from its place and handed it to her. "You should have this," I said. "I've kept it long enough." She took it carefully, studying the image of her younger self and the father she barely remembered from before everything fell apart. "Thanks, Dad." After they left, I sat in my office alone, staring at the empty space where the photo had been for years. Something had shifted today. A door had opened that I'd feared would remain locked forever. Noah found me there, lost in thought. He waved a hand in front of my face. "Earth to Sam. How'd it go with your daughter?" I looked up at my young business partner who had, in many ways, saved me from obscurity. "She wants to learn Python," I told him with a mixture of pride and disbelief, and she called me Dad. The following weeks brought changes I'd barely dare to hope for. The court-approved unsupervised visitation. I took Miley shopping for her laptop, a top-of-the-line development machine that made her eyes widen when she saw the specifications. We spent a Saturday setting it up together, installing programming environments and developer tools. I showed her tricks and shortcuts I'd learned over decades in the field, watching her absorb everything with remarkable speed. One unexpected Sunday afternoon, my assistant called to inform me that Megan was in reception, insisting on seeing me immediately. I'd been avoiding this confrontation since the acquisition, but maybe it was time. She stormed into my office like a Category 5 hurricane, all familiar fury and indignation. The same expression I'd seen the day I'd walked away from Byte Logic. "You're unbelievable, Sam," she began without preamble. "Using your newfound success to buy your way back into Miley's life? Bribing her with expensive computers?" I let her finish her prepared speech about my manipulations and questionable parenting before responding. The Sam Wilson who had crumbled under her criticism years ago no longer existed. "I didn't buy my way back into her life, Megan," I said calmly. "I earned my way back by rebuilding myself. The laptop supports her interest in coding, something we share. Something you could have told me about." She deflated slightly, her righteous anger meeting the immovable object of my calm certainty. After a long pause, she asked a question that seemed to actually be bothering her. "Why are you so different now?" The answer came easily. "Because I know who I am. Both the guy who wrote code that launched satellites and the guy who mopped floors at midnight. Both are me. Both have value." A week later, the final piece of my impossible comeback fell into place. Brenda appeared in my office doorway, her usual confidence diminished but not extinguished. "I need a permanent position, Samuel," she admitted with visible difficulty. "The transition advisory role is ending, and no one else will hire me after what happened with Bright Mind." I considered her request. The woman who had called me mentally unstable, who had mocked my breakdown and my janitorial position, now needed my help to secure her future. The irony was almost too perfect. "I'm afraid we don't have any executive positions available, Brenda," I said evenly. "But I did notice you looking down on our janitorial staff last week. The cleaning team has an opening. The mop is available if you want to show what you're capable of." Her face flushed with anger and humiliation. "Is this your revenge, Samuel? Making me clean toilets?" I shook my head. "This is reality, Brenda. The same reality I faced when no one else would hire me. The same work you once considered beneath human dignity when I was doing it. The choice is yours." She left without another word, her Louboutins clicking down the hallway for the last time. I didn't expect to see her again, and I was at peace with that. Some lessons people choose not to learn. That evening, as I left the office, I passed Joe, the security guard, now working reduced hours as he eased into retirement. He gave me his usual nod and warm smile. "They always said you were just a cleaning guy, Sam," he observed. But I told them, even with a mop in his hand, that man is building something bigger than all of you. I smiled, thinking about Miley's upcoming weekend visit and the Python project we were planning to work on together, about second chances and the long arc of redemption. They said I was just a janitor. I agreed. But even then, I knew I was building something more important than clean floors. I was rebuilding myself. And some things once properly rebuilt last a lifetime. Joe nodded sagely. Patience is its own reward. As I walked to my car in the fading San Francisco sunshine, I reflected on the strange, circuitous path that had brought me here. From coding superstar to rock bottom. From invisible cleaner to CEO. From absent father to dad again. Sometimes the longest way around is the only way to arrive exactly where you need to be.